So in this segment, we're going to be talking about Starmer kind of doing some of the right things in talking to people that have been affected by floods, but it's just his answer. His answers don't make sense. I mean, this is put together, decently well put together video from Labour, but people can ask you on this stuff. What are the answers? Are you going to increase funding to to help with flood defences, especially when floods are costing the economy a lot of money? And he just doesn't really answer it that well. But we'll see the well put together clip first.
How long have you been living here?
I've been in this house, I think it's 45 years now.
In 45 years, you've never seen anything like that?
I have never seen anything like this in 45 years.
We've been on...
That's all of this man's stuff junked. Flood damage junked.
For a while now, there should be a national resilience flood task force. Meets early in the year, before the winter sets in, and make sure that the local authority, local politicians, local services, emergency services all get a plan together. Because things like draining the drains, things that can get the water away quickly, and if water does start to come up anywhere.
Don't know if they're using a really strong compressor, because Starmer's voice isn't normally that deep, is it?
You've got a response team in quickly.
We were ringing the bell because the sound of the water was horrendous. Yeah. So we were just getting everybody in here, as many as we could get in. This has mainly come from just the public. They can come, they can get the cleaning stuff, they can get their food.
When I was growing up, we got flooded at home, and it was tough.
Obviously, everyone devastated initially, and then, sort of like the guys at the boat end, just everyone trying to pull together as much as possible to pick up the pieces.
And I think this is good, showing that, this community did come together and they did try and help each other out. These are members of the community really helping out here, but it shouldn't come to charity. This should be the government. The bare minimum the government should be doing is helping out with this kind of stuff. So this is a well put together video. In terms of he's talking to people.
How long have you been living?
He's being relatable, saying that, I remember when my house was flooded, blah, blah, blah. It's good. It's good. There's another tweet up. Ian's home was destroyed by flooding. Kaz and Carl's pub has been a hub to support local residents. This is all good. And then he's saying our flood resilience task force will make sure flood defences are fit for purpose, and this will be around the country in certain areas, right? But then you go to this clip from Starmer when he's asked about funding, and this is where he just kind of it doesn't make sense, his answer.
I just don't think it's good enough for the government to come after the event again and express empathy, get ahead of this with a task force. That's what I would do.
Would Labour commit more money to this?
Well, of course it does need money, but the task force is not just about money. It's about getting the basics done, getting those drains cleared, getting the local authorities together, having a plan, but doing it early in the year.
But, that's what I mean by, it needs money, because evidently the councils, either they're grossly incompetent, or they don't have the funds to do this kind of routine maintenance work, which they should be doing. There was a street in the town I live in the town centre, where because the drains weren't unblocked, the street flooded. It didn't have to happen. A lot of damage happened to businesses and I think some residential housing. It didn't have to happen. And I think this is where Labour, again, can use that argument that I've said about before, which is we can't afford not to do this, because someone is paying for it. This gentleman here, Ian, the people in that community at that pub who have given all that stuff, they have paid the price of these floods. And once again, Labour can use the argument of how can we not afford to do this? How can we not afford to make sure that the drains are completely unclogged? That there are flood defences, whatever it may need to actually resolve these problems. This is one of those arguments where someone is paying for it.
Flooding always happens in December, January, February. We know that. What we got to do is in the early autumn, get a task force together, get local plans together to make sure that all measures are taken to prevent this and to ensure the response is very rapid. Because the devastation of people's lives, talking to some families here who've got young children, some people haven't got insurance, so they've lost a huge amount of their possessions, and this cost the economy, since 2010, about £4 billion. So,
and how much would it cost to unblock these drains and make other kind of minor changes to help with flooding? Would it cost £4 billion? Like, this one of those, it's a slam dunk. And as kind of this person points out here, Sal, that the Tories have cut council funding by 60%. I've seen NJ talk about how councils have been basically told to start selling the family silver, start selling off assets. So this is a question of money and competence, where perhaps if councils are given the money and they don't do the routine maintenance, that the individual councils will be punished for it, or some sort of mechanism where you can do that. Because one of the stupidest things you can do is set up a task force where they have all these notes and say, oh look, these drains haven't been unclogged and blah blah blah, and the council say, look, we haven't got the funding for it. Nothing happens, and then you get a big flood, And then it turns out the council and the task force knew that these things were a problem, but no one dealt with it because there was not enough money, and then you get floods. Because all of that stuff will be on record, and that'll come out, and the public will be like, what the hell's happened here? So he does have some of the right answers here. It's okay. It's okay. Like, he does well in this interview. Or well, he doesn't really have great answers. He kind of deflects and pivots a bit. But I think this clip here, he appears very human. It's a very good piece. You know, he's talking to someone and relating with that person is good. It's a lot better than Rishi Sunak in that regard. But I think these task force and things like that has to have funding. The task force inherently has to have funding because you have to hire people to deal with this stuff. You know, there'll be experts on that panel anyways in that task force. And that will cost money, but that's fine because, again, the minimum you could save here is $4 billion. If we had this system since 2010, there's no way it would have cost $4 billion to do basic work like this, and that's how much people are paying the price of. And that's more money going out of the economy. Like, the arguments people make against this stuff doesn't make any sense because at the end of the day, when it floods, people have to pay for it. That's all it is. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Actually, I did want to talk about one final clip, which is this interview from Sky talking about Labour when it comes to outcomes and things like that. I found this quite interesting.
That's where we've put our energy into those central missions and setting out the first steps of those missions already. You know, 1.5 million houses to be built under an incoming Labour government, 2 million appointments for the NHS to get the backlog.
Those are goals, not specific policies.
That's where we,
you know, these are goals. You know, building 1.5 million houses is a goal, not really a specific policy. It's, you know, the specific policy is how are you going to get there. You know, I know Labour have talked about kind of helping out with planning permission and building on the green belt, things like that. That would be a specific policy, or more specific policy to help with that. I think that's one of the things where Labour will struggle in certain interviews, especially with this guy, because he seems to know what he's talking about, relatively speaking, based on what little I've seen of him. He funding, you know, Labour needs to pivot from, on certain aspects like this, from we can't afford it, or you know, it's not just about money, to someone is paying for this already. So the money is there. We just have to allocate it better. That's where Labour can pivot. It's not a case of how can we afford to do this. It should be a case of how can we afford not to do this. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.